as running, something that everybody can do to some degree, is a really, really incredibly complex task. And with so many levels of understanding. So, I mean, today we're looking at strictly the mechanical aspect. Just looking at you like you're a bunch of levers and pulleys and springs with no heart and soul or anything like that. But that's just sort of the first level. But then, of course, there's the physiological level, the muscle level, the nervous system, the psychological aspects of running. Tell me, how many of you are a little bit nervous about seeing yourself on video on Thursday? And that will affect how you run. It really will. So all of those things are part of this. But again, today it's just going to focus strictly on the mechanical part of it. And then the other thing I was thinking about is really how lucky you guys are as students to be in this college. And I was lucky, X many years ago, because you get to learn these things. Like you will learn some biomechanics. How many of you take biomechanics already? Everybody? Okay, that's great. So that'll help. And then you learn about physiology, and you learn about motor learning and developing motor patterns, and you'll also learn some sports psychology, and all those things give you a really good understanding of human movement and of kinesiology, which is what it is. So again, our focus here is completely on the mechanical, okay, and again looking at running as the skill. Now, Bart, you're going to have to keep this.
Is that going to do it? So double click on that. It should bring up a different one, okay. And then once you get it going.
Is this it?
Yeah, that's the one down. This. Yeah, hit that. And then we'll just go.
There we go. We'll take a quick look at this if I can skip this. So the heading here that I had put is don't be nervous because you can't possibly look as bad as this. I hope that you can't possibly look as bad as this. But we'll let this play for a minute or so too.
Like so many of the soccer boys from like that.
I was just saying, you probably know people that you can identify with.
Oh, totally.
That's probably now what do I escape?
I think you just hit escape.
Yeah. So many of the kids from Ashburn.
I guess you just hit that one. We'll just close the current tab.
So how many of you recognize some of your friends and measure yourself up there? So I want to mention this now that instead of bouncing back and forth from sort of information and videos, that at the end I've got the other end of the continuum, which of course would be Usain Bolt, the greatest runner ever of all time. So that once we go through all these points that I talked about, then we'll go and look at his running and then sort of give you a model of what you should be looking like on Thursday when it's your turn. So talk about, you're going to be analyzing running. So what do you look for when you're analyzing a runner? I mean, you can look for things like give a stopwatch out and measure how fast they actually run. But if you're looking at technique, then what are the specific things that you would look for? And so I think the first thing and I did mention mention this in my notes report, but the first thing that you should look for is posture. And I'll just put these up here, all three of them. That when you are accelerating, when you're gaining speed, you have to lean forward. You absolutely have to. When you are running at a constant speed, constant velocity, you have to be virtually upright, erect posture. And when you're slowing down, you have to be leaning back. There is no getting around that. That is absolutely a physical reality. Think about being on a bus, riding on a bus, without holding on to the seats or something like that, but just standing there. And if the bus is at a red light and then takes off and accelerates forward, what are you going to do? What will you do? What if you're not going to fall down? What are you going to do? You're going to lean forward. And as the bus is accelerating, you're maintaining this forward body. And then when the bus levels off and gets at a constant speed, you're going to be standing like this. And when the bus slows down, you're going to lean back. And that's an absolute, you can't get away from that. So the same thing here, if I can get this thing balanced, and if I just walk away from it without leaning it forward, it falls backwards. Right? So the only way I can get this thing to accelerate in the forward direction is to get it to lean and then go. Okay? And that's exactly the same thing that the same principle for you guys running. So is it, when you film tomorrow, is it going to be like what, 10, 20 meters at a
side view?
Rate?
Well, we'll probably start out with kind of an acceleration and getting up to a relatively fast speed.
Yeah.
Full speed.
Full speed.
Full speed. Yeah. Let's not kid ourselves. Full speed.
So when you're and it's the acceleration that determines the body lean, not vice versa. And that's a really important point. I know I coaches all over the place that would tell me or tell people to lean forward because that'll make you accelerate. Well, that's the exact reverse. If you accelerate, then you're going to have to lean forward. So if you come out of the blocks, let's say, and you're standing up, the reason you're standing up is because you're not accelerating. And it's not vice versa. It's not that you're, get myself tongue-tied here, not that, it's the acceleration that determines the body lean and not vice versa. Okay? And when you're running at a constant speed, you should be erect and perfect posture. So the ears, palm line right from the ears down to the hips. And so that's maybe the first thing that I would look for in my analysis of your analysis of yourself. So it's not possible to do anything but that.
It's not.
I'll just keep on talking.
Okay.
The next thing that I'd look for is arm action, and I'm not sure if this is the same order as what is on the PowerPoint, but that doesn't matter. Arm action is necessary because because the forces that go through our lower body are eccentric forces.
They're going again.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I'm going on a different order. So let's go to this one next. So stride length and stride break. That's what determines how fast you run, period. How long your stride is and how frequent your stride is. The literature has shown quite convincingly that at high-level runners, their stride rates are generally the same, almost identical. For someone like Usain Bolt or whoever else, their stride rates are almost exactly the same. What makes better sprinters better is that their stride length is a little bit longer. Now you can see why when you watch Usain Bolt run, because he's 6'4" or whatever he is, long limb, but he also, there's a lot of tall people that can't run very fast. So there's more to it than just being tall. He has the ability to have a little bit longer stride length than everybody else. And that's the same case for sort of the rest of us, right? Most people don't run very fast because their stride is too short. Bart would attest to that. We talked about this, watching football players run, and they're just awful runners. And their strides are way too short, and all kinds of other things wrong as well. So when you train someone to try to make them a better runner, most of the time you're working on how you can get their stride a little bit longer. Now, so just getting better means that better stride length. However, and I should have made this a point on that, or a bullet on that on the slide, you improve your stride length not by what happens in front of you, but what happens behind you. Okay? The natural tendency of people when you say run with a longer stride is to reach out like this and have a longer stride, and that's not effective. What happens when you do that?
Slow down.
You slow down because you block. When you put your foot in front of your center of gravity, just like we talked about with posture, you're going to get some of the force coming backwards along the ground. So you are blocking. So you have to increase your stride length by, again, not by reaching out in front of you, but by reaching back behind you to get more drive behind you. Okay? So overstriding is a big problem, even though we just talked about the fact that most people don't run very fast because their strides are long. Okay? So that's kind of the second thing in terms of sort of a comfortable natural stride. It's going to be different for everybody. So here's the arm action stuff here. So contralateral arm action means left arm, right leg, right? So I walk like this. And the reason for that is because the force that goes through our hips is an eccentric force. That's where I was before. Not to be confused with an eccentric muscle contraction and concentric. Eccentric means that it doesn't go through the center of gravity. Center of gravity kind of runs through the middle of my body, like an axis straight down. And when I take a step, my center of gravity is here. My foot is outside of my center of gravity, so an eccentric force causes rotation, period. And so when you get rotation from the lower body, you have to compensate with the upper body. Okay? And that's why you get the contralateral arm action. Most of the time, and you would notice this, that really good runners are pretty narrow at the hips, male and female. You look at Usain Bolt, and they're just really, really linear. Okay? There's biological differences in just individuals and in the genders. Women are typically a little bit wider at the hips than men, so their forces are a little bit more eccentric, means it causes a bit more rotation, which means that you have to compensate a little bit more with the upper body. Now, if I were, and I'll use myself as the example here, if I just locked my arms in and ran, you can see what happens with my shoulders, right? Instantly, somehow you have to compensate with your upper body. So the correct way to compensate for that is with your arm action, okay? If you ever are in the gym watching people on the treadmill, and I think maybe I notice with females more than males, but not necessarily, is that I see a lot of runners running on the treadmill with their arms locked, essentially at the shoulders, and they're rotating like this, okay? And so it looks like their arms are moving, but they're not moving. They're basically locked at the shoulders. And so, again, in terms of what to look for arm action, proper arm action. Proper arm action is essentially your arms are at about 90 degrees. So your arm should be at about 90 degrees, although there is some extension. Naturally, there is some extension, but it usually comes back to about 90 degrees. there should be a little bit across the body. So think about your hands coming to about the midline of your body. And that's going to depend on different people too. Like, depending on your body type, sometimes it's going to be a little bit more, and sometimes a little bit less. But the arm action, and there has to be rotation. Look for rotation from the shoulders, and look to see if you're getting this kind of action, which I see every day in the gym. Not every day in the gym, because I don't go to the gym every day. If I did, I would see this. So keep the shoulders fairly steady and work your arms like that. And that's the thing that you can practice without running, just like that. And then, and relax. You see this all the time. People just clenching their fists. I remember a coach teaching me one time that you should train with a toothpick in your fingers, this in between your two fingers and your thumb, and you should be able to keep that toothpick there without breaking it. So that kind of a relaxed arm action and hand action. So what not to do? Again, we don't want too much extension at the elbow. You're going to see when you watch Usain Bolt run, he does extend it, and then he comes back to 90. So there's a little bit of that, but you don't want this stuff. You see lots of runners, again, shoulders locked, going like this. Okay, so that you want to avoid as well. And you don't want that shoulder lock, you don't want this much as well. Okay? Look at the hands, make sure they're relaxed. Since you're all biomechanics types, you would know about tangential or transverse velocity. Okay? Remember that? Do you remember what it is? We got it all right. Think about being on a merry-go-round. How fast you're going on a merry-go-round depends on two things. What two things? Tell me.
Distance you are from the middle.
What's that?
Distance you are from the middle.
Distance you are from the middle, and what else? How fast is spinning, right? So the how fast is spinning part is like how fast you can actually move your leg and accelerate angularly, develop angular velocity in your leg. That's like the speed of the merry-go-round. Then the distance away from the center is that radius, which is like the distance from your hip to your foot. So that's transverse velocity, and you can only run forward as fast as you can make your foot go backwards. That's all there is. So in order to run fast, you have to be able to rotate your leg fast, quickly, but you also want it to be as long as possible. As long as possible. Think about other skills like throwing a ball. If I throw a ball with my arm in here, it's not going to go very far. If I can extend it out there with the same angular velocity, it's going to go a lot faster. So from a technique point of view, in terms of running, you want to be tall. You want your legs extended. You don't want to run like this. You want to run tall. Again, correct posture, good extension from hips, knees, and ankles. There's another reason for that as well. Okay, so that's everything to look for. Look for whether you're tall or whether you're kind of scrunched down, and whether your legs are still bent when you're running. You need to extend. Ask me questions, by the way, anytime here. You feel the urge, stop me or maybe repeat something or whatever. Okay? And then there's the dry phase of a running. Dry phase like that, and then there's the recovery phase. So when your leg comes back, do you remember about moment of inertia? What's moment of inertia? Biomechanics. Can you give an example of moment of inertia? Did you get on that? You all saw probably the only thing people really remember from biomechanics is that turntable, where someone gets on a turntable with weights and gets spinning and then pull the weights in like this, and what happens? Way go. Like you speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. That's because moment of inertia is resistance to a change in angular motion. So you can manipulate your moment of inertia by pulling it closer to the point of rotation. And the closer you can get your mass to the point of rotation, the faster it's going to rotate. So when your recovery leg comes back, you want it to be tucked as high as it can possibly be. And think about the implications of training for all these things. I know that I've seen pictures of myself run from years and years ago, and I have terrible knee flexibility, my quads. So I bet that my heels didn't come much higher than that when I ran. But I watched good runners who's basically heel to butt. So their heels come right up and tuck right here. And then what's the advantage of it? Why is that better? To have your leg tucked from a biomechanical point of view. Why? Because the moment of inertia is smaller or less, so your leg comes through quicker. Okay? So by tucking your leg, you reduce the moment of inertia of your leg, and it will rotate quickly, more quickly through, and so you can get to the next stride faster.
Is that sort of the same idea as the length of the lever?
Oh, it's related to that. Yeah, it's related.
Like I mean, even think of the arm action you talked about. That's going to take longer to get it back through the drive phase versus.
Yeah. So if you're running like this, it's the same deal, right? Your arm, the moment of inertia of your arm is really high. If it's here, it's easier to rotate it up here than it is down there. So that's exactly the same thing. Exactly.
I have a question.
Yep.
So if you're trying to teach someone to kick their bum so you have that smaller moment of inertia, how do you help them? Because if you just like kind of sink your bum down a little bit, then you can kick your bum, and then they think that they're doing it. So
That's
how do you
right.
help them not do that, like stay at Thomas and
Yeah.
their bum?
Again, classic. So you see people going like this, so that they can hit their bum. I mean, if you've been around track or even not, you've probably seen mock exercise, right? Mocks. So you do mock A's and you do B's and you do leg kickers. So where you're kind of aiming to imagine demonstrate this stuff, but you're running and all you're doing with your hips extended, trying to do that, and trying to get your butt, get your heel to your butt. The biggest problem that I think people and coaches have is they're looking at the wrong leg. Now, not necessarily in this drill, but if you think about mocks, I've seen thousands of football players and athletes go like this. And so analyze that. I got a nice high knee drive, right? What's wrong with that? Criticize my running here,
Your other knee's bending.
my other knee was so in order to get my leg up, I kind of did that. And most people watch the wrong leg. They see this nice high knee drive, but what they don't see is their back leg is flexed, hip is flexed, knee is flexed. So what you want to see on these butt kickers as well is this from the back leg. So if I'm, well, keep my left leg, so like that. And that leg has to be extended, again, both because of the transverse velocity, and there's another reason coming out the way.
There's one thing, Burke, that probably the best hamstring machine in the pack certainly is the standing upright hamstring machine. Much more functional than the seated, hip flexed leg curl. But how do you see the technique of people doing the standing? Oh, they flex the hip, right? They flex the hip, which makes it almost completely useless. And it takes that need for having 160 pounds in the stack. No one can do that right. No one. Because when I do it, I use about 40 pounds, but it is picture perfect.
Yeah.
But because I'm trying not to sink down to the weight, which is exactly what we see when we're doing mocks or trying to get that leg movement. Yeah.
Not really. What it does is it reduces, it increases its stride rate because the recovery is faster. Yeah, and now the other thing, if we talk about mocks, and if you're familiar with mocks, you know that there's sort of the A's, which is like this, straight up, straight down, and then B's. And if you remember the B's, they kind of reach out and do that. Again, the biggest problem people have in that is they think they have to reach out in front of them and grab the ground, and that's terrible running technique. As soon as you hit the ground in front of your center of gravity, you put on the brakes. So even with the leg extension, you want it to come down right there, right below your center of gravity. So it's there. Even though there's a bit of an extension. So again, directly below. Just gonna check my heart rate. Okay, so leg check for that extension at the back, and then check reflection as it comes through. And then here's the one that's a little bit controversial. And again, if you remember the quantum mechanics stuff, you'll remember this E plus momentum theorem, which talks about force times time equals a change in momentum. So force times time. And it's not just running, it's any form of kind of locomotion. So I mean, the example that I use more often than not is throwing a ball. Okay? So if I had a tennis ball or something, if I just went like that, I'm not going to get the ball going very fast. Technique and coaches would tell you to wind up, right? Start from back here, like that, go over this long time period. You can generate a force over a long time period. You will get that object to go much, much faster than if you can't do that. So think about the implications of training there. What are the implications of generating, well, first of all, what are the implications of generating a high force in terms of training? How would you train if you wanted to increase your ability to apply force? It's not a simple question or answer.
Slower tempo.
Sorry?
Slower tempo.
Okay, but what goes along with the slower tempo? Would you just do it slow? Would you same resistance? Would you
Increase the movement.
maybe? I mean, this is an area of expertise that I'm not really familiar with, but or as familiar with as somebody like Burko and people in more training. But wouldn't you want to get stronger to apply more force? So if we think about throwing, if I'm going to throw a baseball or a discus or a shot or a football, and I want more force, I would train for strength. I would try to get stronger. Now it's not just about strength. There has to be speed incorporated and power and all those things that I'm sure you're learning about. Okay, so that's the one aspect, that's force, and then there's force times time. How would you train to maximize the time that you can apply force to something? What would you train for? What characteristic or attribute of fitness would you train for to try to apply a longer force, your force over a longer time period? Watch me throw. What?
What's increased?
Range of motion.
Sorry? Mobility, which relates to what sort of characteristic of fitness? Flexibility, and again, that's a huge topic. You can't say I'm just going to become more flexible, because there's static and dynamic, and there's ballistic, and there's all kinds of flexibility. But you would want to be able to apply a force with a longer range of motion, right? It's exactly the same with running. You want, and that's the other reason why you want this hip extension. You want the ability, believe it or not, to run fast, is you want to keep your foot on the ground as long as you can. As long as you can. Because the longer you're able to drive into the ground, the more you're able to generate velocity. And that's kind of counterintuitive, I think.
So Daryl, it would be the force you can put your foot in the ground. So that's what the deadlift and the squat, because what do we really work? I know we're flexing, but the hard part of the deadlift and squat is the extension. So when Daryl puts his foot in the ground, his extension at the hip, so he puts it down, his foot as hard as he can in the ground in the right spot, and then it's that lengthening of that time, which means stride length. Which again, That's where 99% of the athletes I've worked with, they're all strong. It's never been an issue. They just don't have the ability to keep that foot in the ground long. They pull it up early. So they get the sensation of my feet are flying and my stride frequency is great, but they're not able to have that force in the ground for very long.
Yeah, exactly. And again, you think about, and I know I always come back to football because that's where my heart is, I guess, at Bart was involved in a lot of football over the years too. But when you watch these runners, they typically run a little bit sitting down. Arm action is usually awful, and they usually stop their stride somewhere way too short. They don't have that extension. Now think about training again. Think about your body. What do I need from my lower body to get into that position like this? Strength where, flexibility where. Flexibility where? At the front, right? The quads, the hip flexors. And strength where? Back here, hamstrings, glutes. So, and then you go watch all these boneheaded football players going to the gym. What do they train? They train on squat. They train to get their quads stronger, and they stretch their hamstrings. Right? You go in and stretch your hamstrings and build a bunch of squats. So they're doing exactly the opposite. You should try to get flexibility in the hip flexors and the quads, and strength in the butt and the hamstrings. So the exact opposite. So again, lots of literature says will tell you that Usain Bolt is fast because he can apply a force over a longer time period. That's it. That's what separates him from the rest of the world-class sprinters. Which, I mean, that's another world altogether. Okay. There you go. So, I'm going to show, this is a couple of minutes of our guy running here, Bart. Maybe you can
I'll get this set up.
and cue it up. It's probably 2 or 3 minutes long, but we can just let it roll out. Maybe stop it at that time. And pause it. How do I pause this? Space bar?
I think space bar. Let's try it.
Okay, so what are we? So tell me again. Recap. When you go to analyze yourself on the when you run, what are you going to look for? Posture, arm to arm action, arm swing. Yep. Stride length, stride frequency. 2 more things. Yep, the extension of the back leg, staying tall. That's the critical thing, that's the most important thing. And then your leg tuck. So keep those in mind. Let's watch our guy here, the greatest runner of all time. This is in slow motion. Watch his left leg. Now this is a start, so it's a little bit different. Watch his left leg here. I'm going to try to pause it at just the... Okay, so look at that. I mean, that is absolutely as perfect as it can possibly be.
And that's not easy.
That's not me.
That's not easy. You'll see on Thursday.
Yeah.
That's tough.
And so that is complete extension. That is maximizing the length of time that he's driving into those squats, which is going to increase his velocity and right down to the ankles, like the complete extension of the toes, the plantar trapeze. And he will do this repeatedly. And that was just, so here he is again, slow motion. Again. pace at the beginning of the race is accelerating a little bit, but look at the extension. Look at the extension. That is absolutely unbelievable. Okay. He's starting probably to go at about a constant speed here. You can tell that his posture is nice and upright. He does really extend his arms a little bit, maybe more than other people, but they come to 90, they extend, they go back to 90, and then they come through at 90. So that recovery, again, is at 90. And if you saw him from the front, there we go again. Now he just, you can see the arm action, a little bit of extension, and it comes up, you can tell it's coming just under his chin. And again, even at the very end of this race, and again, look, watch his recovery rate here. Watch his recovery rate. I mean, you would have to take Bart and 3 other of you guys to bend me and force my leg to get in that position. Now, I would suspect it's the same problem for a lot of you guys. You're probably pretty flexible.
And by the foot plant compared relative to his hips, what's he doing right now? He's braking, right? So that's the other thing too that we'll watch to see where that relationship is between the foot strike and the hips.
And that's that posture thing right there. He ran 9.58. This was 9.58, and he's slowing down 5 or 10 meters before the finish line. Like he could have ran faster. Could have had better times.
He's fine.
He's already celebrating.
Now you know what would be interesting? I looked for it as well, and I couldn't find good quality video of Ben Johnson back in '88.
Yeah.
And because he was different, he was a different, because he 5'9", 5'10",
220 maybe,
and
just packed.
not your typical sprinter physique. And I think we would see if we could side by side Usain Bolt or someone like that, or Carl Lewis and Ben Johnson. There's some big differences, and I think Ben Johnson didn't do things perfectly, but was just superior in terms of strength, power, force.
So again, we can watch this one more time. Extension, arm action.
And he drags his toe on the first couple strides. That's on a start. You'll see he drags his toe because you don't want that big foot lift. Because foot lift means you don't get your foot back in the ground as quick.
Again, look at. I mean, that's just absolutely beautiful. I mean, all of those guys are different, but he's just that much greater.
And you even look at the head position, which I think is a big cue for setting the posture properly. If you come out of the blocks and look where you're going to finish, it gets you upright too quickly. And you'll watch most of them for the first 20, 30 meters, they're all looking about 5 meters in front of them. Their chin is tucked down. Some of them won't look up at all. This could be a breakthrough. We could have some world-class sprinters in this class.
And Bart's right about the relaxation thing. When you watch people's face, you can also, that's the big cue. So you see these guys, their cheeks are jiggling and kind of jaws are bouncing around, as compared to that, like this. Which again, you come and watch our 40s Husky football team, watch these bozos try to run 40s. It's just awful. Like
but they're trying really hard. And almost, I would say most of the time when someone does their best 40, they will report, I didn't feel that fast.
Yeah.
Because they relaxed. And I've always thought that the tighter they were through the neck, down through the shoulders, the biggest implication of that was it shortened their length. Because short arm path, can you imagine? I'd like to see you do this. Long arm path and short legs. You can't do it.
Because their length. It's one with the other.
So I'm a real big fan of trying to get that leg length starts with the arms. And you'll see a lot of guys, and again, because we're tight through the anterior, that's as far as I can go. And they need to be able to have the flexibility to really extend back to the shoulder. Lots of our guys don't have that. So short arm path, the leg path leg length, stride length has got to be short as well.
Do you think that's a genetic?
Absolutely.
Do you think you could train someone from an young age to be a sprinter?
I believe very strongly that there's a bandwidth that you genetically are kind of capable of, and that you can reach the top of that bandwidth. There's no way in the world that either Bart or I could ever run like that. Even in our glorious youth, we couldn't do that. There is absolutely genetic factors, but the training factor, I think, can take you from maybe the lower end of your bandwidth to the upper end of your bandwidth. And training in so many different areas, like we said initially, from a muscle point of view, strength, speed, power, from the neural pathways of developing those motor patterns so that even when you're fatigued that you don't lose technique. And then there's a psychological part. Like, man, sprinting is so psychological. Like, it really is. And, you know, whether it's, you know, can you outrun the bear? I mean, that would probably get me to run pretty fast if I had to outrun the bear. Adrenaline, all of those sorts of things come into play. But absolutely, there's a genetic component. There's actually a racial component as well in a lot of different ways. Black men, and I'm not sure how that relates to women, have typically sort of on average shorter thigh, longer calf than Caucasians. Okay, so think about one of the points that I talked about in terms of the recovery phase. Shorter calf, and so it means that the muscle is and the mass is closer to the head, so your recovery can be faster.
So longer tendon in the back of the leg, right?
Okay,
So,
yeah.
because you typically won't see it. Now again, if I wasn't wearing sweats and you could see my calves, you would all hopefully say, not a sprinter, not a real good sprinter, because most sprinters have that long tendon and a very high calf, right? And that's where you think about the fourth generation comparing a tendon to a muscle. I'll go with the tendon every time, right? And there are some differences with African origin people that have some differences.
Yeah.
No, everyone's checking out their calves.
Yeah, I know. Not sure if there's anything else that I have.
So my question is what causes hamstring injuries?
I think Bart probably. Why,
So what was the question?
Why are hamstring injuries so prominent with sprinters? Like, what's this deal there?
Like, I can understand football because of the
Yeah.
that you talked about, but like why in sprinting? It
Yeah.
feels like they specialize to
So why would hamstring injuries be prevalent with sprinters? And I mean, I haven't researched it, but I have my theory on it. In part because I think when you're talking about sprinters who they're sprinting to be fast, they're at their upper end of their physical capability, number one. And I think when you look at, you know, those athletes that we've been looking at, like that, they're the Ferraris, right? And you need that mechanic that is working on them every day. So they're going to have massage therapists, their own dietitian, like everything matters for them. I've never torn my hamstring, ever. I tore my quad once, never tore my hamstring or tweaked it even. You know why? Because I never ran fast enough to actually really put real limits on it. But I think there's a real important thing, and Daryl talked about before, about where we focus our training. And it's so much of it's anterior, and we got to get to the posterior chain. That's why deadlifts and squats and the power cleans and the pulls really are so important. It's because it's posterior chain. It's making our glutes, hamstrings strong. But you think about not having that flexibility or that strength and the force that we're generating, and then putting that hamstring at length, whether it be in the recovery or the drive phase, I think it's just putting a lot of tax on a muscle group that typically we don't train enough compared to the quad. We're more quad dominant.
So with the football team, do you guys do like specific preventative measures for that sort of thing?
Well, we don't train anterior as much as we train posterior. That's our strategy. And a lot of things, and I think the one thing that you were talking about, like how can you get that stride length and that lean? I'm a big fan of pushing stuff, pushing boxes, pushing prowlers, because it starts to teach you that body lean, and it allows you to really work on that stride length. The one thing that Daryl didn't talk about, maybe you could discuss at some point, would be the whole idea of doing some downhill over speed.
That's another thing that probably. But getting back to I'll get that in a second. From
Yeah,
a mechanical
sure.
point of view, at least what I think about with the hamstring is it's got a couple of long lever arms. It really does. So at the hip, it attaches way back here on the what's the attachment of the
Your sit bones.
yeah
On
the ischial tuberosity
of the pelvis, yeah.
And then down here, they attach pretty low, insert pretty low, so there's a pretty big lever arm there too. And what you get, hundreds of times over, is you get flexion of the hip and extension of the knee at the same time. So your hamstring goes from this position where it's more or less flexed to close to complete extension and stretch, and then it pulls back down. So it's a really dynamic, explosive stretch and pull every time. And again, we've got 3 or 4 guys standing around practice this morning because they pulled the hamstring. It happens all, I don't know why. It seems that the harder they train, the more likely it's going to pull. I don't.
Maybe they're being asked to do too much speed work in March, where they're still working on the base of strength. Again, all those things need to work in, and that's just being a sprinter. The reason those people train is for sprinting, but if you're a hockey player, soccer player, football player, you're training to be better at the sport, which there's other variables you need to consider. Usain Bolt never has to do an agility ladder, I don't think, or cone drills, because change of direction isn't part of the game.
Inclines and declines, that's a good point. I remember the old phys ed gym, there's those ramps up from the weight room up to the gym too. And I used to, we used to do hamstring exercise where we walk up, kind of sit right in up the ground. And that's a great, even if you go over the walkway, over College Drive, and if you kind of straighten out and pull up the hill, that's a really good hamstring strengthening exercise. Conversely, and you get people to training as running to run hills, on inclines, because that forces you to really drive at the back end up that hill, okay, and gravity's kind of pulling you back down. Conversely, running downhill is a great way to train too, at a very, very low 3-4 degree kind of decline, because it forces you to move your legs faster than they would normally. It's like, imagine, sort of having your hands stuck onto a car or something like that, and it pulls away and you're trying to keep up with it. So you have to force your legs, and especially when you watch people run down a hill, their recovery leg just flips up and comes through like that. And you gotta be careful. It can be kind of dangerous too.
So what's the downside? Because overspeed, there's a lot of appeal to that. So why isn't running on a really fast treadmill? I'm assuming all those Olympic guys would be running on really high-speed treadmills.
I would think so. Yeah, overspeed. Yeah, I think it's the same. I don't know. It's the same principle to me as that slingshotting. With pulleys and I don't know if you've seen that, or with with those spring-loaded cables where you run behind someone, then you get pulled and you have to run faster than your legs would normally want to go. I think it's all pretty much the same principle.
And the nervous system, because you can only force yourself to go so fast. We won't be doing slingshotting Thursday, because again, and I've done some of the downhill running with the football players, and it's hard to find that 3-5 degree grade when it's, and sometimes even that 3 or 4 is too much for some, and you'll absolutely see them windmill in the arms and get in their feet, their heels in front of their hips, because if they don't, they will face plant. And then it's not a good drill for them.
Okay, would you like to see Bart run a few sprints now?
Do you really want to?
We should.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm ready. I warmed up earlier.
Yeah, I did. Any more questions or thoughts, comments? I would like to come and watch on Thursday, but I'm not going to. But I'm going to make sure that Bart shows me the videos.
We will have some videos for sure.